Hello everyone, welcome back to my podcast. My name is Ari and I am the host of this podcast. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and in this week's episode I'm going to be reading and reviewing books that were very kindly sent to me by MarcyKate Connolly. So thank you so much, MarcyKate Connolly, for sending me 3 of your wonderful books. They were all such a wonderful pleasure to read. I enjoyed each and every single one of them, and now I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about them. So the 3 books that she sent me, 2 of them are actually a duology series. The first book in this series is called Hollow Dolls, and the second book is called Lost Island. And you guys, both of these books are so fantastic. This is one of my favorite middle grade series ever. It is only 2 books, which is what makes it a duology series, but it is just so wonderful. So let me go ahead and tell you guys a little bit about this series. So the first book in this series is called Hollow Dolls, and this follows the 2 main characters, Simone and Sebastian. Simone and Sebastian are gifted children, if you would like to say. They basically have powers. So Simone is a mind reader and Sebastian is like a memory taker, and they are both friends because they were both held captive by a lady called Lady Aisling. She is the villain of this book, and this whole book follows Sebastian and Simone. So after they are freed from Lady Aisling, everyone went back to their long-lost family. Everyone but Simone. Simone cannot find her family. No one has seen any trace of them. So this whole book follows Simone and Sebastian and their adventure/quest to go find her family. While on their way to find Simone's family, they meet a lot of mysterious people, some good, some bad, and basically along this whole journey, they uncover a lot of mysteries, a lot of truths, a lot of lies, and just a lot of amazing things. And it ends really great. And let me tell you guys, this book had me second guessing every single character. I felt like I could trust nobody. The book was so wonderful. I loved it so much. And now the second book, Lost Island, kind of picks up where the first one left off, and it's still the main characters, Simone and Sebastian, and now they're kind of on a new adventure. So in this book, they are still facing the villain from the first book. I won't say who it is so I don't mess it up for you guys, but they are still facing the bad character, and they are trying to put an end to this bad character because let me tell you, they are bad, hence the name bad character. But yeah, so in this book, they are just going on the adventure and they are trying to stop the villain, and it's so wonderful. I loved it so much. I liked it a lot because it was a continuation. I already loved Hollow Dolls, so getting more of Simone and Sebastian in Lost Island was such a pleasure, and I love this book so much. So you guys, be sure to check out this duology series, Hollow Dolls and Lost Island. This is something so creative that I've never heard of in a middle grade. Kids that have powers of mind reading and taking memories away and going on this adventure as kids to stop the villain. It's so incredible and so wonderful, and like I said, just really creative and authentic, and I loved it so much. I really hope you guys check it out. And then the other book MarcyKate Connolly sent me, like I said, thank you so much, MarcyKate. I loved all of these books, is actually called A Breath of Mischief. So this book is actually really new. It just came out April 4th, so you guys, you can go check it out from your local library or purchase it with the links in this episode description. You can purchase all of those books. I'll have them listed in the description. But this book is called A Breath of Mischief. It's also a middle grade, and this is actually its own book, so it's not a series, it's its own book. And this book was so fantastic. It was so wonderful. This was such a wonderful adventure, and this book follows the main character. Her name is Aria, which I love, by the way, because her name almost sounds like mine. Ari just has a few extra letters, but that's super cool that this book kind of like almost had my name. It actually has only 1 extra letter, so that's really cool. Aria and Ari, I feel like this was almost like my own little fairy tale adventure. But yeah, this book follows the main character Aria, and basically Aria was raised by the wind. Yes, the wind, the element, the wind. She was raised by the wind, and she grew up in a castle that is basically located floating in the clouds. So very fantastical. I love that element so much. And then one day out of nowhere, Aria's best friend Gwen wakes her up very frantically, and she finds out that the wind is gone. So the castle that was once in the clouds is now landed on the ground, which is very wrong. That should not be. It should be up in the clouds floating away, but no, it's on the ground, and this is because the wind has vanished. It's gone. So this book basically follows Aria and Gwen on their very desperate search to find the wind, because without it, their lives are forever changed and ruined. So they just go on this adventure to find the wind, and the wind is being held captive by a character named Warden. So like I said, this book follows Aria and Gwen on their adventure to save the wind. So that was a wonderful book to read. It was a good length, and I've never heard of a book about like one of the elements containing in it, so that was really wonderful. I loved that it was about the wind and how this little girl Aria, she basically, the wind is her life. Like, she grew up with the wind, and it just shows that when you love something or someone so much, you will go to any extent, any length to try to get them back. So I love this book so much. It was a wonderful fantasy adventure, and yeah, you guys, I really recommend all of these books. Hollow Dolls, Lost Island, and A Breath of Mischief are all by MarcyKate Connolly. They are all exceptional reads. I really thoroughly enjoyed them. These were just such wonderful middle grade fantasy adventure reads, so I really recommend checking them out. And like I said, you can do that by clicking the link in this episode description. Actually, several links to purchase every single book if you would like to. So yeah, that is all I want to tell you guys about these books. Basically, just go check them out, go read them. And I actually had the wonderful opportunity to interview the author of these fantastic books, MarcyKate Connolly. So here is our interview that I got to do. It was so much fun, and here it is. Hello, MarcyKate. Thank you so much for doing this interview here with me today. I really appreciate it. And before we begin, I just want to say thank you so much for sending me your books and for allowing me to read and review them here on my podcast. I know I really enjoyed them, and I'm sure my listeners will enjoy them as soon as they check them out. So thank you so much for doing this here with me today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Of course. I love hearing from the authors of the wonderful books, so thank you for being here. But now let's go ahead and begin. So first, when did you know you wanted to be an author? Has it been a part of your life since you were a very little girl, or was it sort of developed over time as you got older?
You know, it's funny. I wanted to be a whole host of things when I was growing up, but author actually wasn't one of them. Oddly enough, I wanted to be an archaeologist, a detective, president, a Broadway star, and for a while I even wanted to be a farmer who lived in a mobile home driving around the country with animals tethered to the back. I always loved to read though, and that was really important to me growing up. I also really loved music and singing, and eventually I became interested in writing music, particularly setting poems to music. And in college, I wrote an opera, but I used words from Shakespeare. I didn't write them myself. It wasn't until my late 20s that I finally got my very first book idea, and I figured if I can write a 2-hour opera, then maybe I could write a novel. And I did, and I haven't looked back since.
You know, when you were saying your response, I literally felt like I was hearing myself talk about me, because I obviously am still really young, don't know what I'm going to do with my life yet, and I feel like I want to do different careers every other day. I'm like, okay, one day I'm going to be a doctor. The next day I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be an author. Like, it's just changing every other week, it feels like. I just feel like when you were talking about how you were when you were a little girl, it reminded me of how I am currently and how I've been for the past few years. So that was very nice to hear that everyone can relate in a certain way. And I think it's so wonderful that you kind of did develop it over time, just like not knowingly when you started writing your music and then you wrote an opera. I think it kind of developed over time. And like you said, I'm so glad you have not looked back since you became an author, because I don't know what I would do without your books. I am so incredibly honored to have them on my bookshelf. When I walk into my room, I look at all of my books from my authors and I'm like, I can't believe that they are all authors that have such incredible stories. So thank you so much for being an author and for sharing your stories with the world. I know other people like me, and actually my sister loves your books. She actually found them first. She found Hollow Dolls. We checked it out from the library. She read it. She was like, you have to read this. I read it. We both loved it. So like I said, it's just such an incredible honor to be getting sent your books and then to be doing this interview here today. It's incredible. So thank you so much. Like I have said so many times throughout this interview, but thank you so much. And now moving on to the next question I have here. What is your all-time favorite book? And did you happen to get any inspiration from some of your favorite authors or books when you were creating your own stories?
Oh, this is such a tough question. There are so many books that rank as one of my all-time favorites that it's really hard to choose. I suppose I'd have to say The Little Prince by Antoine Saint-Exupéry. I first read it in French class in high school and then later read it in English, and I just completely fell in love with the story. It's just such a beautiful story, and I love it. I have it in pretty much every format: hardcover, paperback, French, English, audiobook, and even pop-up book. Kind of obsessed with it, actually. Also, my other top faves be The Dark is Rising sequence by Susan Cooper, the Redwall series by Brian Jakes, and Douglas Adams' The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Definitely all hold up later on in life reading them. Definitely big favorites of mine. So I haven't intentionally taken inspiration from those books specifically, but they definitely have informed my taste, that's for sure. However, I do often take inspiration from fairy tales and mythology and other classic stories like that, especially if I'm working on a retelling.
Yeah, that kind of was a hard question. I always feel bad when I ask authors like hard questions that are even hard for me to answer. For example, if someone asked me what is your favorite book, I would have no idea, because I'm just such a huge bookworm. I like so many books, but I love that you said The Little Prince. I've actually never read the book. Please don't come after me. I know it's like a sin to you. You have so many different copies and I've never read it before, but I did watch the movie that came out years ago. I watched it when I was younger with my family and I loved it so much. I don't know what it was about it, but I loved it so much, and I haven't watched it in so many years. So now doing this interview, I kind of want to go watch it. I love that movie so much, so I can definitely see how it is one of your favorites. And yeah, I feel like you never really want to take inspiration from another book because it's kind of taking their idea, but I think it is great to take inspiration. Don't take their ideas, but take inspiration from them to kind of incorporate that into your own stories that are now published and that readers all around the world like myself are enjoying and reading. And I think it's wonderful that you take your inspiration from fantastic fantastical and mythological stories. I think that's so wonderful because it's also like a learning lesson in a way. And now the next question I have here for you is, what is the whole process of creating a book? I'm talking from the day it was just a little idea that popped up in your head out of nowhere to the day that it was finally published. And also, did you happen to face any challenges or problems while going through that whole entire process?
That is a big question. Did I face any challenges getting my first book published? Absolutely. But let me take this question one part at a time. As far as process, that can vary. There are certain benchmarks that generally happen each time. Before I had an agent, I'd get an idea, and I'd plot and draft and revise until I didn't know what else to fix. And then I'd send it to my critique partners for feedback, and then I'd revise again. And often I would do another round of feedback and revisions too, at least another one, maybe more, depending on what kind of shape the book was actually in. Once I reached the point where I was getting like very minimal feedback from beta readers, I was ready to query agents. And that was the hardest part of the process for me. It took me 4 years, 7 books, and well over 300 rejections to finally get an offer on my first published book, which was called Monstrous. After that, I did yet another round of revisions with my agent, and then she pitched it to editors. And once it sold, I did 3 rounds of edits with my editor, and then it went to copy edits. It's a lot of editing, lots and lots of editing. Now, copy edits are basically the nitty-gritty type of edits. Things like that word doesn't mean what you think it means, or your character's shirt changed color in the scene even though they didn't change their clothes, or your math doesn't add up. Things like that. Once those are all done, you get one last chance to fix things before it gets published in what's called first pass pages. That's when you get to see how the book will look on the page. It's really cool. It's exciting. There's all these little details like chapter headers, the font, any illustrations. Those are generally all included in them, and it really makes it feel more like a real book. Some editors will print them out and mail them to you. I had one who was kind of old school who liked to do that, but nowadays most will send them to you as a PDF for you to mark up as needed, and along with some like queries they may have for you in those pages too. So at this point, of publication, you're probably about like 6 months to a year left before the book actually lands on a bookshelf, and that's when marketing begins, which is pretty cool too. You'll get like a cover, you might get blurbs from other authors, advanced review copies, and all sorts of fun things. And then finally, eventually, your book ends up on a shelf. It tends to be like a pretty long process, a lot longer than I expected, I know, when I first started publishing books. As far as challenges, getting an agent was definitely the biggest hurdle, but every book really does present its own unique challenges. Sometimes it could be like a plot point that's just not working, and you can't quite figure it out or get past it. You have to go back and forth with your editor many times to really hash it out and figure out what's not working and what needs to be altered, or maybe you need to throw that plot point out entirely and do something else. That's happened too. Other times it could be landing on the right title. That can be difficult. Usually I get the title pretty well, but not always. Sometimes it's not quite the right thing. You have to go back and forth for a while and find the right one that everybody's happy with. And then other times, there's a worldwide pandemic that brings everything to a screeching halt. But you have to do the best you can, and really the most important thing to do is to keep writing that next book.
Wow, that was a lot. Like you said, it's obviously not something that you can just explain very easily. There's a lot of things that go into publishing a book from the beginning to end. So thank you so much for taking me through that whole process and the whole journey. I found that very fascinating and interesting, and I'm sure my listeners will as well, right, you guys? That was so fun and fascinating. And I think I asked that question in my episode that I did with Sarah May for the Cool Code. She was the illustrator of that wonderful book, and she talked about the whole process of creating a graphic novel, and I loved how they are so similar but yet so different. Like the whole process that y'all have to go through, it's so long, which obviously good things come from time, but I think that was so cool to hear the whole process and the whole journey that you went on to create all of your books. I know it takes so long to get an agent, so I'm proud of you for making it this far and for creating such wonderful works that I love so much and that people all around the world love. They're all so wonderful. I cannot believe it took you so many rejections. You said over 300. That's insane. And I also loved how you said sometimes a global pandemic happens. Yeah, I don't think really often, but I know for us it did happen. So I liked how you said that. That was really funny and made me laugh. But yeah, I love all of your books so much, and I loved hearing the whole process that you went through to create it. It's like eye-opening. Whenever I see a book now, I think about that whole process that wonderful author had to go through to have their book be in my hands as we speak. It's such an incredible process. So thank you so much for really breaking it down for me and for all the people that listen to this. I know I found it fascinating. So like I said, thank you so much. And now the last question I have for you. What is one thing you have learned from being an author? And is there any exciting news that you can share about any upcoming projects?
Oh, I've learned lots of things, but I think one of the most important is that rejection in publishing is rarely personal. Publishing is this strange conjunction of art and business, and taste is very subjective. A book one person loves, another will totally dislike. And the reality is that authors get rejected all the time and at every stage of the process. It doesn't matter who you are or how many books you published. At some point, you're going to get rejected. Either it's from, querying agents when you're just starting out, or submissions to editors, to trade reviews, to readers, somewhere along the way, you're going to get rejected. And you have to find a way to make peace with it and develop a thick skin and not take it personally, because it can be a lot sometimes. I liken it to, some people don't like chocolate. I love chocolate. So in my opinion, that leaves more chocolate for me. But that doesn't mean that, people who don't like chocolate are bad people. They don't like it. It's just their taste. And you have to kind of figure that out in your own way. It's not necessarily an easy thing to do, but you gotta figure that out. As far as upcoming projects, yes, I have a book that's out on Tuesday, April 4th called A Breath of Mischief, which is about the daughter of the wind. When all wind in the realm disappears, she and her companion, a griffin, head out in search of the wind to find out where they went and to rescue them. And I'm super excited for that. Really fun fairy tale inspired book. And also, we just recently revealed the cover for a book I co-authored with Catherine Holmes called The 13th Circle. And it's such an awesome cover. I love it. It's a middle grade X-Files inspired mystery, and that will be out in January 2024. It's about two girls who team up to investigate a local crop circle phenomenon for a science fair. It was so much fun to write.
That is such exciting news. The books that you talked about, Breath of Mischief, I already had the wonderful opportunity to read it, and I loved it so much. Great job on that book. Literally, it was so fantastic. And the other book you were talking about that you got to co-write, that sounds so wonderful as well. I cannot wait to check that one out. And going back to when you're talking about what you've learned in your life, obviously, you live and you learn. I loved how you used the chocolate example. I mean, I am a chocolate lover. I love chocolate with all my heart. And I loved how you said it's more for us, because, that's true. And I think you were so right in the sense that you do have to find a way to make peace with it, because like you said, it's nothing personal. If someone doesn't like your stuff, it's all based on opinions. That's what that whole world is. So yeah, don't take it personally if you get rejected. If it's not from a book, just anything in life, don't take it personally. See it as a way to learn from that and continue to grow. Because look at MarcyKate Connolly, you guys. She got rejected so many times. She had so many no's in her life with her books and her writing career. And look at her now. I have 3 of her books, all wonderful books, sitting right in front of me. I'm literally holding them. So you guys, don't give up on anything. Just take those rejections and learn from them. Don't even see them as rejections. See them as learning opportunities to take whatever they told you and to better yourself, or whatever it is you are trying to better. And yeah, just don't give up on your dreams and keep pushing, because eventually it will happen if you push enough. But yeah, unfortunately, that does bring this interview to a close. It was so much fun hearing all of your different answers to my questions. I loved it so much. I really enjoyed reading your wonderful books as well. And with that, I guess that brings our interview to a close. So like I said, thank you so much. I just had a blast doing this interview with you. I learned so much from you, so thank you so much. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It was so lovely chatting with you.
So yeah, you guys, that was the interview that I did with MarcyKate Connolly. Once again, thank you so much, MarcyKate, for sending me your books and for doing that interview with me. It was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, you guys, I guess this episode is coming to a close, and it's kind of sad because I love doing this episode. So every time I have to say that line, it's always very sad, but also very exciting, because then it's one step closer to you guys hearing it. So thank you so much for being here and supporting my podcast. I really appreciate it. If you would like to purchase any of the books I talked about today, which are Hollow Dolls, Lost Island, or A Breath of Mischief, I will have the links to purchase them in this episode description, so be sure to go check them out. Be sure to go follow MarcyKate Connolly over on Instagram, and you can go follow me. I'll be posting some extra posts and stories for MarcyKate Connolly and her episode. And yeah, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And with that, book lovers, keep your head in the clouds and your heart in a book, and I will see you guys very soon. Bye, friends!